Welcome back to Bazaar, I'm Miko, and it's time for another hotfix patch review. First and foremost though, let me just say thank you to Tempo Storm because they are finally posting patch notes again. And this is just a necessary thing for the health of the game. I'm glad we're not wholly reliant on other websites like Bazaar or Mobalytics to get our patch information. Let's go through the changes and then talk a bit about the metagame, how it likely affects it, and how I feel about the patch. First up, Money Tree has been reworked again. The cooldown scaling has been removed, the cooldown's changed to a flat 4 seconds like Fixer Upper, and the value scaling when you sell a spare change is increased by 1 at every tier. This is just a really good change. I don't think the Money Tree was particularly broken, but at the same time, having value scaling effects attached to 1 second cooldowns is a very dangerous and oppressive sort of mechanic, so I think it's a good idea to immediately be like, whoa, let's rein that back. Next up, the chunk of gold got hit. It's lost 40% sell value at every tier, going down from multiples of 5 to multiples of 3, and it really needed it. Max economy was insane, but this is not the only direct hit that chunk of gold is taking this patch. Retort and Calcinator both got nerfed. Calcinator got nerfed more. Its cooldown is increased from 6 to 7 seconds, but otherwise the nerfs are identical. They both get 2 less scaling at every tier. Previously it was 4, 6, 8, 10. Now it's 2, 4, 6, 8. That's a good change. They just scaled ridiculously effectively previously, and this will help rein it in at least a little bit. But the other very important change is now they say at the start of each day, spend 3 gold to get a chunk of lead. This is pretty important because 1, it makes economy management harder and requires you to end your day with money, and 2, specifically at bronze tier, they're no longer really economy positive. They're just giving you an item that can be transformed, and as a bronze tier small item, it's only worth 1 gold because the chunk of gold sells for 3 and you spent 3 gold to get it. It's only at higher tiers where your economy starts to balloon out of control, and that's probably a really good thing. Max economy was completely insane in the previous patch, and it needed to be reined in. I think maybe spend 3 gold to get a chunk of lead is a little bit too far, where it's like not even net positive at bronze, but I do think it's better to be overzealous with this sort of nerf than to be slow with it. I'm normally very much of the opinion that you don't want to nerf things too much all at once. Mac was oppressively strong and his economy was part of it, so hitting this with multiple nerfs at once, we can rein them in later if it's too much. But his economy was insane, Calcinator scaling was insane, and these nerfs needed to happen pretty immediately. Moving down, Philosopher Stone is down to 1, 2, 3, 4 regeneration every time you transmute something. That's half what it used to be. On the one hand, I don't think Philosopher Stone was so overpowered that it really needed the nerf. But on the other hand, if Mac wants to play with the regeneration mechanic in interesting and different ways, it's very likely that Philosopher Stone is like very aggressively narrowing the scope of how they can do that, because it represents so much regeneration if you hit it early. So I think this might be more of a game health thing than Philosopher Stone itself being particularly overpowered and needing the nerf. Next up, a very good change. Smelling Salt now says when this or an adjacent item slows, haste the item to the left of this for 1, 2, 3, or 4 seconds. Previously, it was any slow. There were a couple effects of this where it would give you way more haste than it should, but the main effect of this nerf is not just like, oh, it's not as good at generating haste now, because really it just needs to be like adjacent to an instance and the item you want to buff. It's not a big deal. The main thing this does is it no longer converts Rust into start of combat haste on an item of your choosing, which was an incredibly broken thing that Smelling Salts could do previously. Next up, I've been preaching this change for months. I'm very happy to see it happen. Flurry of Blows is now the first 4 or 8 times you use a weapon each fight, charge another item 1 second. The change here is that it says another, it can no longer self-charge. I've been saying forever that 1 weapon builds on Vanessa will always be broken if we live in a world where this can charge the item triggering it, because either the build was already great and this breaks the build in half, or the build was mid and not really viable and this makes it too strong and too much of the power is allocated here. I still think the same thing is true of Alacrity, but I understand that, at least at a theoretical level, Alacrity is harder to trigger than Flurry of Blows, so while I would like to see Alacrity get the same change, I'm glad that Tempo is receptive to this sort of feedback and making this sort of change, especially with Flurry of Blows, where it's like thematically not even sensible to work on 1 weapon. And they fixed the bug with the Lockbox. Previously, they had reworked they designed for it, didn't actually happen. It's supposed to be 369, and now it is 369. It was previously 2 at all tiers. And while these patch notes don't include like the exact descriptions of exactly what the changes are, you can still get more information by going somewhere else and seeing the exact number of changes. And I appreciate the data scraping websites still provide this. The important thing is that new players can actually figure out what things do by going to official resources. I don't need the exact minutiae of changes from Tempo Storm themselves, I just need them to actually communicate what is changing in the game. The community as a whole needs that. There were so many people after the previous patch where it's like, dude, I started the game as Dooley, I don't have a core, and they just assumed something was horribly bugged. So re-implementing the patch notes is a wonderful thing. As for the changes in this patch, I think everyone has seen a money tree blow them out in the late game. It wasn't crazy powerful. It wasn't that far removed from like what Fixer-Upper already did, but the design of a 1-second speed item that has value scaling is kind of toxic to the game and not good. Max economy was insane. The scaling value in particular on Calcinator was far too strong. It became a central part of the metagame. It probably still is with this nerf in spite of that. And then, like, the rest of these changes, like, this is just a very important bug fix to make the item usable. This is something that I've been advocating as a great balance change for a while. And Smelling Salts was allowing start of combat targeted haste, which was obviously broken. These are pretty minor changes outside of the chunk of lead rework, basically. That chunk of lead rework is pretty massive. This is a huge hit to max economy, a moderately large hit to the ability to scale a Calcinator. Just, in general, really good for the game. I like this patch a lot. And it should come as no surprise that I like this patch a lot, because the gameplay video I'm uploading today basically consisted of me saying, hey, I'm done playing characters that aren't Mac until Mac gets fixed because of Calcinator. Like, because of the changes. I still think the other characters are in a bad spot. The other characters need help, and Mac's probably still the best character. But this is a huge step in the right direction. And I think something that's really hard to evaluate when you look at patch notes is the overall effect on the metagame. Because the previous patch, I think, really did do nothing but good changes in a vacuum. It's just the effect on the metagame was that Mac went from one of the two best characters to the best character by far. Truthfully, looking at these changes, I don't know that I think this is really enough to change that about Mac. I still think Mac is going to be the undisputed king of the metagame, and I think all of my problems with Pig and Vanessa and Dooley still hold true. I think Pig is too reliant on letting the game tell him what he's allowed to play, and really incapable of building towards a game path the way other characters are. You're just waiting to see what in-game strategy is presented to you as a viable option. I still think Vanessa basically only plays weapons. I still think Dooley basically only plays drill. However, I think the changes are all moving the game in a better direction, and even if I think after this patch Mac will still be dominant, this is a massive step in reigning in that dominance. It needed to happen, and it needed to happen quickly, and I'm glad to see that it did. I think I'm just going to call this a straight W. I think this is nothing but a fantastic patch. They immediately came in, said, you know what, the catalysts are causing a problem, Mac is unfathomably rich, Calcinator, Retort, and Philostone are too good. Hit all of it with nerfs that was well-deserved. They did some other minor changes as well. They fixed the Lockbox, they made Smelling Salts not work with Rust in particular, they made Flurry of Blows weaker in one-weapon builds, they redesigned the redesign for Money Tree in a way that makes a ton of sense. I think this patch is nothing but good. As always, though, I'm evaluating the changes without really being able to see exactly how they shape up in the ecosystem. I never really predict how the meta is going to look because it's so hard to do. But this time I'm going to go ahead and guess that, while the meta is in a healthier place, it's probably still Mac dominated. And there are some more changes we need to see to really... I don't know how to describe it. To really make the other characters feel competitively viable is a weird way to describe a game that has no competitive ladder and is played wholly for fun. But from an optimization standpoint, I feel like if I'm doing an over-explain for Vanessa, Pig, and Dooley right now, I would jokingly say, the first mistake I've made with this run is I forgot to click on Mac at the start. And that was definitely true on the previous patch. I think it's still true on this patch. But regardless, this is a necessary and important change to start fixing that, and I'm glad they did it so quickly. Because frankly, the entire character is impossible to evaluate properly and figure out what the problem is when you're regularly in the hundreds of gold on day 7. Because, like, that just warps the gameplay so much. Between the outrageous economy and the incredible power of just having Calcinator as a great mid-game plan that can easily be scaled to one of the strongest things in the late game, I think this is a fantastic patch. I'm glad they hotfixed it immediately, and I'm thrilled that they included patch notes about it. Anyways, I still think Mac's gonna be the king of the patch. Maybe I'm overestimating how good Calcinator still is. Maybe it's hurt so badly that mid-game Mac falls off and the game starts to open up again. I hope that's the case. I'm not convinced it is. But time will tell. Let's play the game and figure it out together. If you made it this far and you aren't subscribed, I should tell you, you can subscribe for more daily content just like this. Either way, thank you for your time. And if on your way out you can hit the like button, that really does help boost the channel up in the algorithm, help it grow, and it really does mean a lot to me. Anyways, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.